Hello, my dear students. Here we are again addressing our favorite topic, menopause. Now, the interesting thing about the word menopause is that it's really quite non-specific. I mean, there's pre-menopause, peri-menopause, and post-menopause. But most people just ditch the distinction between the three, and they use the term, generally, menopause. Well, when they generalize by using the term menopause, they are typically referring to our topic for today, which is peri-menopause. Peri-menopause is the transition time between pre-menopause and post-menopause. It tends to be the most attention-getting of the three. Why? Well, you know how I used this merry-go-round as the analogy for pre-menopause in the tutorials on pre-menopause? I used it because pre-menopause consists of cycles that go round and round, month after month for years on end. And each cycle entails a lot of predictable up and down. So, pre-menopause is like these horses going up and down as they go round and round. But peri-menopause is more like a roller coaster. Not only is there nothing merry about it, there is also nothing predictable about the up and down. So today we'll focus on just peri-menopause. This information is primarily in chapter 3 of my book, with references to it elsewhere when appropriate. So, why is it that everybody focuses almost exclusively on peri-menopause rather than on post-menopause? I think that's because peri-menopause presents the most obvious external symptoms. Long ago, I taught you that the process of becoming menopausal is all about losing your female hormone estrogen. This creates a state of estrogen deficiency. All hormone deficiencies present in pretty much the same way. First, they cause a long list of symptoms to alert you to the fact that something is missing. Second, they cause fatal diseases if you don't replace the missing hormone. Well, peri-menopause is when all the symptoms start piling up. And there are enough of them to really turn your life upside down. But while all these symptoms constitute many different ways of getting your attention, none of them is as attention-getting or as devastating as the diseases that don't present until post-menopause. So even though most people focus more on peri-menopause than they do on post-menopause, you need to know that post-menopause is by far the more important of the two. When women say been there, done that in response to the word menopause, they are referring to peri-menopause. But the statement been there, done that makes no sense whatsoever if you have any kind of education on menopause at all. Been there, done that implies that there's an end to menopause. There isn't. It lasts for the rest of your life. The women who say been there, done that mistakenly think that peri-menopause is all there is to menopause, and they are ever so wrong. And most of the women who say been there, done that have nary a clue that the diseases of estrogen deficiency loom over them in the future. So we will address post-menopause completely separately from peri-menopause. For today, we'll focus specifically on peri-menopause. And we'll start at the beginning, of course. So we'll start with pre-menopause. Pre-menopause is when your ovaries produce eggs with the potential for fertilization. And you ovulate one egg each month. It's a merry-go-round, month after month after month. Well, at some point, your premenopausal merry-go-round of ovulating eggs for fertilization comes to an end. So how do your ovaries know that it's time to end premenopause and begin peri-menopause? Well, my dear, it's all about how many eggs you have. You were born with over 1 million eggs in your ovaries. They're kind of like golden eggs, all shiny and fertile, just waiting to ovulate. So you started out with a great big pile of golden eggs in your ovaries. But over the course of your reproductive premenopausal life, you've ovulated only about 450 of them. One per month for, about 40 years from, say, age 12 to about age 52 or so. The rest of your eggs just shriveled up. They never, ever got used. They went from golden to gone with nary a sign. And your ovaries were also a hormone factory that produced estrogen and progesterone to carry out the process of ovulation and preparation for pregnancy. Well, you begin your transition into peri-menopause when you reach a critically low number of 1,000 eggs. And by that time, your eggs aren't so golden anymore. They're actually rotten. But menopause doesn't happen overnight. It occurs in phases. Peri-menopause is the transition time between having rotten eggs and having no eggs. So one of the common symptoms of peri-menopause is difficulty getting pregnant. But Mother Nature is tricky. She doesn't turn your reproductive potential off immediately or even predictably. It can take 2 to 10 years to get through peri-menopause. And guess what? Even though you have very few eggs, and even though the few eggs you do have are rotten, you can still get pregnant during peri-menopause. And not only can you still get pregnant, you are more likely to get pregnant with twins. Yep, twins. So what happens when you have rotten eggs or no eggs? Well, your eggs were present to accomplish one purpose only, pregnancy, right? And which hormone exists for that same one purpose? Progesterone. So when your egg factory starts shutting down, the first hormone to start disappearing is progesterone. By definition, peri-menopause means loss of progesterone. But of course, this doesn't happen overnight either. You see this multicolored line? It depicts here the plummeting of progesterone that defines peri-menopause, right here. But the time frame over which progesterone plummets is 2 to 10 years. Since progesterone was one of the two hormones that created your menstrual cycles during your premenopausal life, what's going to happen to your cycles when your progesterone starts to plummet? Your periods are going to get wacky. That's what. For most women, peri-menopause is when their periods become less frequent, less regular, and heavier. If you're unfortunate enough to have any of the syndromes or diseases that I've presented in videos 465 through 471 as part of your pre-menopause, they're likely to worsen. So if you have hormonal headaches, premenstrual syndrome, premenstrual dysphoric disorder, endometriosis, polycystic ovary syndrome, uterine fibroids, uterine polyps, or cervical polyps, it's likely that you'll have more difficulty with them. Another common feature of peri-menopause is the onset of anxiety. Mind you, progesterone deficiency is not the only contributor to anxiety, but it certainly does get it started. But menopause, both peri-menopause and post-menopause, isn't just the disappearance of the eggs and progesterone from your ovaries. Instead, it's really more about the disappearance of estrogen from your ovaries. Your ovaries produce piles and piles of estrogen. Estrogen is like magic. It was your fountain of youth. It kept you young on the inside and the outside. During peri-menopause, the quantity of estrogen production by your ovaries decreases. And eventually, it disappears completely. But you guessed it, this doesn't happen overnight either. And complete disappearance of your estrogen marks the beginning of post-menopause. Remember, it can take 2 to 10 years for your progesterone to disappear completely. All the while, your estrogen is struggling to act alone. So what's going to happen to estrogen all that time? It's going to freak out. It's going to fluctuate wildly. It's going to be just like a roller coaster. The combination of plummeting progesterone and wildly roller coastering estrogen is precisely what makes peri-menopause the most chaotic of the three phases. It's certainly not as predictable as the up and down merry-go-round of premenopause. So peri-menopause is this part of the roller coaster. It's the big, long descent. The problem is that it's not fast and furious like a real roller coaster. Instead, it's slow and laborious. I know that some people like roller coasters. I'll never understand why. For some, roller coasters are thrilling. I find a roller coaster about as thrilling as peri-menopause. That's why I chose a roller coaster as the prop for this tutorial. It just seems so fitting under the circumstances. So even if you like roller coasters, imagine a deep plunge like this that lasts years instead of just minutes. And let's not forget that the symptoms of peri-menopause from plunging progesterone and chaotic estrogen are not as silent as the diseases of estrogen deficiency, which are silent until deadly. But peri-menopause is the most outwardly disruptive of the two phases. The symptoms are hectic and havoc-wreaking, and that's why everybody focuses on it so much. In reality, while your estrogen lags behind the progesterone. It too is disappearing. It's just a matter of time before you reach the land of zero estrogen here at post-menopause. And just like the disappearance of your eggs and progesterone, the disappearance of estrogen does not occur in a linear, predictable manner either. Instead, it's chaotic. So the symptoms that are typical in the 2 to 10 years of perimenopause that cause massive chaos for many women are as follows. Absent periods, irregular periods, heavy periods, PMS, anxiety, heart palpitations, hot flashes, night sweats, insomnia, fatigue, forgetfulness, mood swings, irritability, depression, joint pain and stiffness, dry skin, hair loss, vaginal dryness, urinary incontinence, urinary tract infections, weight gain, decreased sex drive, headaches, nausea, vomiting, leg cramps, yeast infections, drowsiness, cravings, breast tenderness, bloating. Now you see why perimenopause gets so much attention. So when your ovaries ultimately die, but you don't, both factories shut down completely, the egg factory and the estrogen hormone factory. So that is what leaves you in a state of estrogen deficiency for the rest of your life. The very definition of post-menopause is estrogen deficiency. Now, this failure of your ovaries to produce estrogen causes your FSH to rise. I've taught you about FSH before. I've taught you that FSH is follicle stimulating hormone. FSH is the hormone that comes from your brain and tells your ovaries to produce estrogen. So, the FSH says, ovary, please produce some estrogen. I'm low on my supply. And then your ovaries ignore the command. So, what happens? Well, your FSH starts rising. Maybe you didn't hear me. Estrogen, please. And the ovary continues to ignore the command. Hey, ovary, pay attention. We're low on estrogen. No response. Ovary, stop sleeping on the job. Wake up and give me some estrogen. Nothing happens. Do I have to spell it out for you? ESTROGEN? Ignorance. Ovary, you lazy bum. What do I have to do to get some estrogen? Still no response. Ovary, you're pathetic. Get busy. Estrogen now. This is what happens. FSH rises. So, a high FSH value indicates peri-menopause. But wait, none of this happens suddenly either. It all happens not only gradually, but very irregularly. It's not a nice, predictable, linear process. Instead, it's an extended time of inconsistency for your eggs, your progesterone, your estrogen, and your FSH. That's why I think of it as a roller coaster. You see, when I teach you all about this stuff, I give you the textbook explanation. I teach you what happens to bring about the changes that you experience. But it never happens in your body as predictably as it does in my lessons. For your body, it's a time of complete confusion. In other words, you can never know what's happening at any given time. It's just like a roller coaster, up and down, fast and slow, twist and turn. Heck, if it were instantaneous, smooth, or even somewhat predictable, you'd have no trouble whatsoever knowing where you are in the transition. But Mother Nature didn't make it that way. Instead, it's a very long, drawn-out process of slowly closing down your egg and estrogen factories. So, instead of going directly from golden eggs to rotten eggs, or from 1,000 eggs to no eggs, you endure 2 to 10 years of complete confusion. Sometimes you ovulate, sometimes you don't. Sometimes you release 1 egg, sometimes you release 2 eggs. Never forget that peri-menopause is a time when your fertility is much lower than it was during pre-menopause. But it's not absent. You can get pregnant during peri-menopause. And because everything is so unpredictable, you might just ovulate 2 eggs instead of only 1. So the likelihood of twins is quite high. Can you imagine? So because your progesterone plummets over a period of years, you notice symptoms of progesterone deficiency irregularly. Likewise, because your estrogen slowly disappears over a period of years, you notice symptoms of estrogen deficiency irregularly. This long time frame of all these changes is the reason that most women don't recognize peri-menopause when it arrives. The process is so on and off that they have all these chaotic things occurring alongside normal things. Well, what's going to happen to your FSH with all this chaos? It's going to be chaotic too. Some people mistakenly think that FSH is the diagnostic test for peri-menopause. Well, your FSH ranges between 2 and 15 milli-international units per milliliter during your pre-menopausal phase of life. And then ultimately at post-menopause, it's permanently above 30 milli-international units per milliliter. The problem is the 2 to 10 years in between. During that extended period of time, there is no reliable FSH value for peri-menopause. And that's because of the process by which it rises. It is not linear. Remember, your FSH is reacting to the behavior of your estrogen. If your estrogen is chaotic, then your FSH is chaotic. If you were to check your FSH level every day, or every week, or every month during peri-menopause, it would look like this. So the question becomes, which one of those represents your reality? All of them. This is why I tell you that it is completely unnecessary to utilize labs to diagnose peri-menopause. It just doesn't make sense to use labs. Each lab is one snapshot in time. But your life is the collective result of all of these values. Your FSH and your entire life are in complete chaos. So you're much better off just recognizing the symptoms of peri-menopause and managing it accordingly. When women say that they want to get their labs in order to know where they are in the process, I cringe. What they are saying is that they have to endure all of this chaos in order to attain information that will not help them at all. And when they ask me, well, how will I know where I am? I say, who cares? I mean, you're going to get there. It's as certain as death and taxes. But it takes a long, long time during which you will be miserable. So save your time, blood, and money. Skip the laughs. Do whatever you want to make your life as normal as possible, because peri-menopause will put your entire life on a roller coaster. Okay, so thus far, we've talked about changing levels of progesterone, estrogen, and FSH during peri-menopause. That leaves us with just one other hormonal change that takes place during peri-menopause: oxytocin. It starts disappearing too. Why in the world Mother Nature made it start disappearing at the same time all this other chaos is going on, I don't know. I taught you in video number 463 that oxytocin is the bonding hormone, the glue, that made you loving during premenopause. It made you love people, events, and things while you were still on the merry-go-round. But one of the signs that your peri-menopause has arrived is that you stop loving people, events, and things, and you start loathing people, events, and things. This is very disturbing to most women and families. But it doesn't have to be disturbing. In fact, some women think this is the best thing about peri-menopause. My made-up name for what happens when you lose your oxytocin is the neither doormat nor dormant phenomenon. It's actually two separate things that I've merged into one phenomenon, neither doormat nor dormant. First, there's the doormat phenomenon. This refers to the fact that you've spent the last 2 or 3 decades being a doormat. You've let people walk all over you, always doing things to make everybody else happy and always putting yourself last. You've taken harrowing, hassled vacations to hot, crowded, noisy amusement parks at the hottest time of the year just because the kids like them. Why they call them amusement parks is beyond me. I think they're abusement parks, and you might share my sentiment, but you went anyway. You've left your perfectly comfortable home to go camping, which constitutes living outdoors like a homeless person, just because your man likes it. It should be called cramping, not camping. It cramps your style in every possible way. You've slaved away in the kitchen, making big meals so that the whole frenetic, dysfunctional family could be together and become even more frenetic and more dysfunctional. You've spent several hours preparing meals that your family gobbled down in minutes and then left the mess for you to clean up. And you did this day after day after day. You've hauled decorations out of the attic holiday after holiday in order to make the house festive for the family, and just created yet another job for yourself of putting it all away a few weeks later. Well, you can blame your oxytocin for your doormat days. It was the glue that made you do everything for everybody else's benefit. You were so busy taking care of them that you forgot to take care of yourself. You might have even given up on your own interests so long ago that you don't even know what your own interests are anymore. Because of oxytocin, you've voluntarily played the part of Cinderella who cleaned up after her evil stepmother and evil stepsisters, but in your case, the evil relatives were your husband and kids. But here's the phenomenal thing about the doormat phenomenon. At peri-menopause, you decide that your doormat days are over and you start saying no. It's not the first time you practiced saying no. I mean, you practiced it a lot when you were 2, and then again when you were 12, and now you're going to get really good at it and stay really good at it by the time you're 52. Finally, this renewed habit of saying no will spill over into all aspects of your life. You'll say no to social invitations, no to your children's demands, no to sex, no, no, no. It will be your favorite word all over again. Instead of letting everybody else walk all over you, you'll put yourself first. You'll say, it's all about me. Doesn't that sound wonderful? And while your doormat days will be over, your dormant days will not. That's because the second half of my made-up neither doormat nor dormant phenomenon is the not dormant part. Once you lose your oxytocin and tell everyone else to go jump in a lake, you'll be free. You can do whatever you want. Hopefully you'll discover something I like to call menopausal zest, and you'll pour yourself into some passion. You'll spin all your energy into something you love, just like Rumpelstiltskin spun straw into gold. Instead of lazy, you'll be zesty. You'll be able to focus on things you've put on the back burner for decades. It's your turn. All of this can happen irregularly over time, just like everything else during peri-menopause. But you'll get there. And then you can live zestily ever after. So now you see why I simplified this to a transition from loving to loathing in video number 463, when I introduced this shift from the diseases to the symptoms of peri-menopause and post-menopause. And guess what? We don't have oxytocin replacement. Nope. No matter how much you want to go back to being loving, you'll have to find a way to do that on your own. So I will not be presenting this particular symptom of perimenopause and postmenopause when I present all the management options to you. It is what it is. All told, perimenopause entails some pretty drastic hormonal changes. Your progesterone disappears completely, your estrogen plummets, your FSH soars, and your oxytocin slips away. If we make a chart of these things that constitute perimenopause, here's what we get. Here you see that across the top row, I've designated the 4 things we've addressed in our discussion of perimenopause. Your eggs, your progesterone, your estrogen, your FSH, and your oxytocin. In the first column, I've listed the following changes: the actual change, the quantity of the change, the time frame of the change, the symptoms associated with the change, and the irregularities associated with the change. I've color-coded using orange for eggs, yellow for progesterone, pink for both estrogen and FSH since one is dependent on the other, and green for oxytocin. And in the cells, I've depicted all the details of each. If you want this chart, you can find it by clicking the link in the description box just below this screen, or you can go to menopausetailored.me. If you're struggling with perimenopause, go to menopausetailored.me and schedule a consultation with me. I'll help you smooth out your roller coaster. The chart is your summary, but you already knew that. And that covers perimenopause in general. Next week, I'll present a tutorial on how to recognize perimenopause if you're still having periods. If you want to assess where you are in the process of transitioning into postmenopause, just schedule that consultation with me at menopausetailor.me. I do them all online, so it doesn't matter where you live. Please remember to subscribe to my channel and my newsletter, and remember to follow me on social media. If we're going to start a menopause revolution, we'll need lots and lots of menopause missionaries, and you'll be one of them. So I will see you in a week. Bye, my dear.